You are listening to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss our RC adventures.
Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. I'm Michael from Arizona, and with me always is my good friend,
Jay from the hills of Texas.
And how goes it tonight?
Well, it goes that we're concluding your visit to my place and all the shenanigans that fell in between.
I know. It's my last day tonight.
It is. It is.
And I'm sporting a...
yeah, okay, folks. I'm
sporting a new look.
Once again, the podcast doesn't do this justice, but I am looking at an inverse raccoon. That's the only way I can kind of describe it.
Well, let me tell you, it was nice. This last 2 weeks has had weather that ran the whole gamut. It was
almost freezing weather.
Almost freezing weather and cloudy, rainy. Mm-hmm. It was some days were super uber windy, but today was the piece de resistance.
And it was a record.
And it was a record high.
Yep.
It was 91 degrees today in Texas and not a cloud in the sky. And the wind was right down the runway, but gusty at times and dead at times. It was kind of strange.
It was kind of weird.
It's kind of weird. So, but we decided, actually we called Jim and we said, hey, it's my last day today. And so he said, well, I'm going to bring out we're going to really, send you off with a bang, and I'm going to bring some good planes. So we loaded up the whole truck. We took a whole bunch of stuff.
Dug out. The good part is that we got my radio working. So now
correct.
That
is correct.
Opened up the inventory of things that I have in my rack.
Yeah, I think we mentioned on our last podcast that we had reset the radio. We got it working. We rebound a bunch of the airplanes that we had taken the FR Sky stuff out of and put the Spectrum stuff back in. And today was our day to kind of go out and say, okay, we're going to spend the whole day flying. So about 9 o'clock in the morning. We rolled out to the field with a truckload of airplanes.
And batteries.
We had the L-39 again. We had the Cessna 310 that you dug out of a box and got all ready to go. We had the 2.5-meter ASW-28 glider.
That's true.
We had the Radjet, I think, that you had dug out of a box somewhere. And
right.
To fly. We had
old Hobby King plane.
Yeah, we had the Tough Wing. We had your 3-meter glider. Which surprisingly enough we never even got to.
Yeah, it just got too windy.
But we got out there, and then as soon as we showed up, Jim rolled out a beautiful, what is it, an Acromaster? I guess highly modified Great Plains.
Yeah, it's a giant. What is it? A giant.
I think it's an
Acromaster.
Acromaster.
That doesn't sound right.
Aeromaster.
It was a giant Aeromaster.
All right, so we got there, and Jim rolled out a beautiful giant Aeromaster. Now, it's been highly modified.
Yes. So modified that it looks nothing like,
the
actual aircraft.
Right.
Because I have one. It's
that's
in a
correct.
box.
Yeah. Yep. You do have one.
It doesn't look anything like mine.
Nope. He recovered it in the black, silver, and yellow scheme of the Pitts S12, the air show. The same one that I have, actually.
Yes.
You got me. He put a big cowling on it. It's actually a Sukhoi or something cowling, or a Yak 54 cowling, I think. And then he extended the elevator and the rudder, made them bigger.
Bigger, right.
But he did so internally. He didn't just add something to it. He actually rebuilt it, bigger rudder, longer elevator. And I think it's got some kind of a 60 motor or something in it. He told me, and I can't remember.
Motor, yeah.
It's a gas motor. So anyway, he brings it out, puts it all together, and he's like, "Wow, I'm ready to fly this," and I'm thinking, "Oh, great,"
Which it's been sitting in his shop for the past 3 years.
He said that he actually flew it recently, but it's still been several months.
3
he
years?
had it out. No, but he told me that he's flown.
Oh,
it
he did?
then.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he's had it for maybe that long, or however long he's had it. But he did say that he had flown it months ago, or at least had it out. And I know that he had it out on his bench and was working on it just recently in the last couple of days.
Yeah,
I
know he rebuilt the car before he brought it out.
That's what he said.
I remember that's what he had done with it.
Yeah, he had rebuilt the car. So pulled that out, and then I think we jumped out and flew. What did we fly first? We flew I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, I know. Well, first of all, though,
days over.
The reason I told you we have the what is that plane there? The Cessna 310, right?
Correct. Yeah.
The reason that I broke that out of the box, out of one of my storage boxes, and put it together was because
that's correct.
Very mournfully, I lost my P-51 Mustang.
Yeah, we actually did an episode on that one last season, right? Where
yes.
we talked about your P-51 has shot, where you had to put all this shot.
I had to put all the shot in it, right, to get the balance out.
Yeah, and so we, since we had the Spectrum radio back, that wasn't today, it was
the day
yesterday.
Before.
Yeah,
the day before.
Yesterday. But we went out yesterday, and he was going to fly the P-51, so he got it airborne.
Right.
And we were going around. You were just about ready to hand me the sticks.
I was.
Let's back up a little bit because I pulled the airplane out of the rack
yes.
and looked it over, and I plugged it in.
Yes.
Something was going clack, clack, clack. I didn't know what it was.
Right. So, so back up even more. So basically, I was working on something on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike was sitting around. He goes, well, what planes are we going to go and bring out for Thursday or whatever day we were going out? And I said, well, let's take out the P-51. And he's like, okay, what do we need for it? And I go, takes a 5-cell battery and some other stuff. I said, go check it out. He's like, okay. So he pulls it off the rack, and that's when he started playing with it.
Playing with it.
He powered it up, and then found the model in my radio, and started playing with everything. And I said, yeah, I have a couple of mixes, or I might have some other stuff in there. So just play around with the radio, figure out what's going on, because I wanted him to take a look at the gyro settings and some other stuff.
Right.
So you were there, and you're pulling back, and you go, I hear this clack, 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 and he goes, why do you have it doing that? And I go, doing what? And he goes, your aileron servo is making that clacking noise. And I go, I don't. Wasn't making a clacking noise the last time I touched it. And he's like, well, what could it be? And I go, dude, you're checking it out. I'm busy doing this. And henceforth, you found out it was?
Yep, we found out. So these servos that you have in there have adjustable control arms. And I know you've probably seen them, but they're plastic, and there's a square piece, and then you put the servo arm in there, and then you screw the servo arm down in.
Yeah, because they have like a ratchet.
Yeah, like a ratchet system on there. So he had those in there, and this particular one, for some reason, it was moving. It was moving. And so I asked him, I said, well, this is moving. Should it move? And he said no. And so I measured everything. I got looked at the other one. I took the servo actually out, got it all, fixed up, and I cinched the screw down to where it's all tight, and it worked fine. Everything worked great. So now we're out of the field yesterday.
Fast forward back
in the field. You took it up, and what you were doing on the bench was actually your new batteries. You got 2 new 5,000.
I did. One of the hobby stores, there was a notice that I was going out of business. I got these 5-cell batteries, brand new, fantastic price, and I was, now I had like four batteries for this plane, so I was all happy, and we'd be able to fly for a long time.
Sure.
So I was going to put one of those in, and I said, well, you know what? I'll just grab my, old standby, and I know it's weight-wise it's good and everything's whatever. So we put that battery in.
Familiar.
Yes, it was very familiar. So took the plane off. There weren't too many shenanigans with the taking off.
No, it was actually flying really well. It didn't take any trim.
Well, no. It took off, and as I was climbing out, there was a buzzing sound.
Yeah, it did sound like your prop was a little unbalanced.
And it sounded like the prop was unbalanced. And I go, hey, what's that? And then between Jim and you guys, you were saying, it might be the monocoque that's buzzing. Mm-hmm. So, folks, usually we have a thing that if your plane's making noise, a strange noise,
land
the plane and check it out. Don't keep flying it. So I was about to land, but it wasn't that loud or terrible of a noise. And so when they said, hey, probably have some loose monocoque, well, I did notice that the plane had some wrinkles on it, so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it because the plane is flying solid.
Yeah.
I was not having any problems, and I was just doing some pattern work and just fiddling with the gyro just a little bit with the wind. And like Mike said, I was just sitting there I'm putting along. I mean, I wasn't speeding along.
You weren't doing any low passes.
I was just cruising. I'm coming past myself. Like Mike said, I was going to I was thinking, after this, I make this pass, I'll just hand the radio off to Mike so he can fly it. And it just clears the runway, and the plane goes into this right roll. And I look at it, and I go, whoa, 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 whoa. And I put it in the opposite control, and it just rolled right over and whammo, right into the ground.
Right, and I've got my back to the field at the time, that you're coming down the runway because I was helping with Jim do something. He was getting an airplane ready. He was going to go fly. And all I hear is this, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I spun around just in time to see this Mustang just do this beautiful slow roll. And I thought, oh, wow, he's doing a slow roll. That's kind of nice. And then it just went bam, into the ground. And I was like, I looked at Jay, I go, what are you doing? He's like, it wasn't me. I had no control. And I'm like, what? So we started walking out there because it obviously was a big mess. And the closer I got, the more my wheels were turning in my head. And when we got out there, I told him, I said, was this really rolling like hard to the right? And he said, yeah. And I go, I bet I know what this is. And I picked it up, and sure enough,
because the front of the fuselage toast.
The motorbox was
the wings, pretty good shape.
Well, yeah, because you weren't like screaming.
No.
I mean, you were pretty low to the ground anyway.
Yeah,
Just, you've got a big motor in there.
Yeah.
So, and you had all that 2 pounds of lead shot in the front too. So
I
it shattered it. But anyway, enough said that he wrecked his P-51. So unfortunately, and it was a beautiful airplane too. It was a Hangar 9. I don't even think they make it anymore, but it was a great flyer. And so as a result, we were like, oh man, we're going out today, and the P-51 kind of got doinked up, and so you broke out the 310 and got it working late Thursday night for today.
Yes.
So we took that out. We jumped out of the truck and, kind of fully started flying. And, I think we flew a couple of the airplanes. You put the ASW together and you flew it.
Yeah.
And
that I was interested in flying just because, of all the other problems we were having with it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of nice to get it out. And plus it was such a nice day. It
had some wind and the buzzards were out soaring. So you got up there with them and we're flying it around. I think Jim flew an airplane or two, and then he broke out the big yellow Giant Aeromaster and started putting it together. So then Jay flew the 310, and that actually flies really well. I was really surprised. Yeah, it's got, for a 3-cell battery.
It looks a little cheesy.
Actually, it's not a bad paint job. You painted it red, white, and yellow.
Well,
with little black stripes.
It actually was it was kind of a gift from a guy up in Alaska that gave it to me before I left. Yeah. And he'd kind of, like you see, the fuselage is painted red. And then I just did a tape job over his paint job. Mm-hmm. So just to make it so it could be visible with the yellow and black paint or tape. So, make it visible and stuff. But no, it looks a little cheesy just because, the gears, compared to the other gear that, we've been playing with between the L39 with the articulating, trailing gear. This is just, the old wire stuck in the thing.
Yeah. But it takes literally like 5 feet to get airborne.
It takes off really quick. That's the part that was really surprising.
I just actually pulled the elevator all the way back, hammered the throttle, and I think the first bounce, it was already in the air.
Right. It hit the grass, got the bounce, and took off.
Yeah, it took off.
It actually gave the Fun Cub takeoff for its money for the flaps. With the flaps
That's true.
Down.
It did, yeah. It was a very short takeoff. And it flew great. It was trimmed up really well, and, it just has some good flying characteristics. We had fun.
It did, yeah. You got to fly it super slow, too.
That's true. I did. I got it flying so super slow, I almost harried it all the way to the ground.
Yep.
Of course, I almost put the landing gear right through the wings, too, because it hit a little harder. The wind was really gusting at that point, and I had the airplane literally at a standstill.
Yeah, it was
and
either on or off.
Yeah, and I was coming down like an elevator, really, and I was just doing this Harrier coming down.
The wind was off.
Wow, I was like, wow, I really got this. This is going to be impressive. And about 2 feet above the ground, the wind just went
click.
Yeah. Just stopped, and the whole airplane just boom. I was like, okay, well, I'm on the ground. And everybody kind of had a good chuckle. But so about that time, Jim jumped up and said, hey, let's fly this big bird. So he went out there and cranked up that Aeromaster.
My lawnmower doesn't even start up as quick as that thing.
I know, that thing was
smooth.
I
was pretty impressed.
Yeah, I was too. Super smooth. And so Jim took it around, a couple of patches. Oh, got to say that I was a little nervous, because this is a big airplane for him, and it's all gas. And, of course, he says, I want you to fly this one. And I'm thinking, okay. And he immediately looks at me and says, I took all of the expo out of this one. I had 100%, but I took it out. It's at 35, so I think you'll be okay. And I thought, very good, Yeah,
Oh,
I
awesome.
think we've been flying 2 weeks. We've been here 2 weeks, and we've flown with him, a couple dozen or a couple different times. And I think he took to heart my point and has kind of backed off some of these 100% Expo airplanes, and we got down to 35%. So he took off, and it was a beautiful takeoff. Came around, he flew it around, did some stuff, and then handed it to me, and I took the sticks and wrung it out, as he said.
Yeah, well, the first flight was a little harrowing.
Oh, that's what happened. Yeah. You're right.
Jim was helping you out.
He was, and so we had it in low rates.
Right.
And I took the sticks and I did I climbed up a little bit, and it wasn't quite. I did one circle around the pattern, and it didn't really respond quite as good. Well, I don't want to say quite as quickly as I wanted it to respond.
You wanted it, right?
I usually fly things in a lot higher rates. I don't, move the sticks that much, and so any little, smaller movements to me are the way I fly. But I want bigger control throws.
Right.
And so I asked him. I was coming downwind basically, but I was in close because I wanted to stay in close. And I said, "Where's your dual rate switch again?" And he says, "It's this one."
Click. And about that time is when I was doing something, and I turned around to see what these guys were doing, and I see Jim goes, "Yeah, it's this one right here." Click, and all of a sudden I hear silence.
The airplane was still flying.
So this plane wasn't like 8 mistakes high. It wasn't.
It was about treetop.
It was
high.
about treetop level.
Yeah, on a downwind.
On a gusty day, and all of a sudden I hear silence, and I'm like, "Dead stick." And it was one of those things where I looked at it, and I'm like, "Okay, can he make it back to the field? Can he make a turn onto the field?"
And actually, honestly, I was flying upwind, but not over the runway.
Yeah, right.
So I was actually headed into the wind. I wasn't on a downwind leg like I originally said. Normally I fly the pattern, but for some reason when I made the turn, I was kind of like, this, it's not turning. I was trying to bring it back to us.
You were just messing with the plane.
I just turned back into the wind. So I was in the wind, but not over the runway. I was over the tall grass area. And he flipped the switch, and he immediately goes, that was me. That was my fault. And then he looks up at his airplane like, I could hear him playing taps in his head, He's kind of like watching the airplane come down. Exactly. Exactly. I felt so bad, because there I got the sticks, and I'm like, okay, I got it. So all I did was kind of make a slight turn towards the runway. The wind was blowing heavy enough that I wasn't moving forward very quickly, but yes,
Hey, you know what I learned?
What's that?
Biplanes don't glide.
Yeah, they don't glide very well. Anyway,
I've never seen a biplane glider, so I know why we don't have them.
Yeah,
because that plane glided like a brick.
It did. But the good news is I made the far end of the runway and the runoff.
You did.
And I hit
touched down in the runoff.
I touched down in the runoff,
and then you ran
overrun,
into the grass,
and then it went into the tall grass.
That was fine.
So I think Jim was incredibly happy that we got it on the ground. I didn't panic and spin it in or anything or try to turn back to the runway. And we actually talked about it because he said, I asked him, I said, well, what if that was you? He's like, I probably would have turned back to the runway. And I went, you wouldn't have made it. And, you don't have enough altitude. I said, if I was about 2 or 3, wingspans further up, I said, I probably could have turned back to the runway. I could have turned directly towards us, but it was low enough that I wasn't quite sure I was going to be able to get that base turn to final if I'd have turned 90 degrees to the runway, where if I just kept it drifting, I turned towards the runway, but I just wanted it to drift over to the runway.
And at that time, the wind was steady.
It was steady. It wasn't gusting.
But it was brisk.
Yeah.
And it was steady. So if like you said, if you would have turned, you would have been going downwind.
Easily. That would have been. Yeah.
And I don't know if that would have helped you much.
No.
Not at all. So.
And I didn't really want to land downwind anyway. So.
No. Unless you want to make it sporty.
Well, but I just didn't have enough room. I was about midway down the runway either way.
So, you know what this reminded me of?
What's up?
Okay, so you remember when we first, I got you into this, and you had a simulator, and then when I would come over,
That's
and
true.
we'd be playing on the simulator, and
Yep.
so one guy would fly, and
The
the
F
other
key.
guy would have the F key, control of the F key.
That's
So
right.
you didn't know when it was going to happen, but you
That's
were going
right.
to have a fault, and you had to do like certain maneuvers. Fault would happen, and then you had to make it back to the runway and land.
That's right.
And that was that. Somebody was pressing the fault key on you, the F key on you, because
Yeah, that was actually probably the best training I ever had. Was was when that. I think we were giggling like schoolgirls, and it was a real flight.
Right.
Thanks to Jim Burke, he designed and has that company. But I think it was real flight 4 or 5.
Yeah, it was one of the early ones.
3.5 or 4.1 or whatever it was. And the F key is the failure key, and you have no idea what's going to happen. They just program a bunch of random stuff. Wing falls off,
Totally
tail
random.
falls off, the landing gear won't come down. So sometimes you hit the F key and nothing happened. You'd be like, "What happened?" And you go to put the gear
your trim
down.
tab broke.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
It's no
yeah,
big deal.
exactly.
No big deal. But at the same time, there were times when the wing would fall off. There were times when Jay would hit the F key so many times before it was like, how many times can I have failures before I actually crashed the airplane? Got
Right.
it back to the ground. So it was a race to get back on the ground before Jay could knock everything off the airplane that the F key would eject. But yes, you are correct. I think luckily for me, then when it happened, now it's not the first dead stick I've seen. I've seen several gas dead sticks.
Right.
And my big Katana S had a dead stick too. I wasn't flying it at the time. Bryant Mack was flying it, but he was like, it engine quit, and he didn't panic. He just kind of came around and landed. So the bigger the airplane, the better it lands anyway. So not a scratch. We brought it back. Jim actually towed it back for us.
Yep.
It was nice of him. And then because it was way at the other end of the runway. And cranked it back up and said, okay, well, now you take it. And I think that's how that happened. So now I actually got to take it off. I took it up, a couple of clicks of trim to get it where I wanted it, and then I just wrung it out. It was pretty cool. Jim was like, wow.
Well, that plane's never done that before. I think that was one of his comments.
Yeah, it was one of his comments, but it was pretty funny. So it flew beautifully, and then shot an approach, and what do you think? That landing was just like smooth as butter.
It was a little bit like butter.
Yeah, so it lands really nice. Little 3-point landing because the landing gear sits a little lower and you don't want to bust the prop off, so especially on the grass. And then he fueled it back up, took it back up on his own. So I think I stood behind him and we talked a little bit about flying the pattern and getting it on the ground. And then he tried to shoot a couple of approaches. Got one. He landed. Then you got to try it, I think, too, right?
Yeah.
You got to fly it. What'd you think?
I liked it. I liked it so much that I'm going to build mine.
Yep. Yeah, because you have the exact same one, just a different color scheme.
Right. It's just the plain old white color scheme. So, but no, I was pretty impressed because after seeing that thing fly and just the fun you guys were having with it, and like I said, I got to try it. I was like, I have this. It's been sitting in a box. I might as well put it together because, like I said, after losing the P-51 and losing my my Cherokee.
Oh, Cherokee, yeah.
You
got a big spot on the wall.
I got two spots on the wall, so I figured, what the heck? Let me build that thing. Let me get out of the box and put it together. I have everything I need but servos, so I might as well, right?
Yeah. And then we busted out the Radjet. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun with that.
So you had out of all my planes, like you've flown most of the stuff, but I've had the Radjet for a long time, and I don't think you've flown it before. So.
I don't. You had that up in Alaska,
yeah,
I think, right?
So for whatever reason,
I think you got it right as I left.
Yeah,
or we had it up there, and something was wrong with it.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, you didn't get a chance to fly it. So I was thinking I was having a problem getting the battery in, and I figured out that I was putting it in wrong. So anyway, I got the battery back in. We went to go chuck it. We chucked it, and we went full throttle, and I think my batteries are a little tired.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of it choked on me once or twice.
So they would give you 3/4, but no more.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But 3/4 was all I needed. It still was moving.
Yeah.
I mean, it was almost as fast as the wing.
Oh, easily.
At 3/4.
Oh, easily.
So I think if I'd have been able to get it all the way up to full throttle.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I will tell you that we broke our own rule because there was a problem with that airplane, but I flew it anyway.
Yeah.
Mainly because I was still at half throttle. Nothing was wrong with it at half throttle, and I figured, well, it's up there anyway. I don't know if we were really going to find anything. The battery, it kind of chirped on me once or twice, so I wasn't really quite sure if it was the ESC or the battery itself.
I'm pretty sure it's the battery.
It may have been the battery not being able to provide that much punch. So I was like, yeah, well, I'll just fly it, kind of half throttle. So it was fun. I was doing low passes. I think I went through the grass once or twice. I did some inverted passes. Did some real high-speed rolls.
And you were saying, hey, this is just like a little miniature jet trainer between
a little miniature
trainer and the Tough Wing.
That's right.
What's the?
Oh, it's called a Derry turn.
A Derry turn.
Yeah,
yes.
In one of our previous episodes, I think it was 2 episodes ago, we were talking about a maneuver that I was doing, and it's by John Derry. He's the military guy that invented it. And you can look it up on the internet. But, yeah, it's just a reverse of course, basically. It's like a figure eight on its side, and you go from one figure eight to the other figure eight. It's just a half roll to the other direction. But, yeah, the Radjet was doing it pretty well. And then I got too aggressive and started yanking it around and screwing it all up again. But I thought for once, I was like, whoa, I almost put it in the ground, but that was okay. Brought it back, landed, threw another battery in there. I was like, hey, you want to try it? And you were like, no, go fly it again. So because of the success that I had on the last flight, I got a little happy on this one and started doing low inverted passes.
Yep.
And this has got, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a Radjet. If you haven't, you can look it up on the internet, but it's got 2 twin tails, right? The 2 tails that stick up. And I was going through the weeds with those tails. And
Deuce's drag.
Tall
grass and Deuce's drag.
But
it says, if you look on the tails, it says that right there.
Yes.
Beware tall grass.
So I was trying to get really low, and I got a little low and started headed towards the grass. And I thought, and I gave it a little push, and I was going to roll up right. And I was low enough to the ground that when I did my roll, basically the wingtip caught a big weed. And it was like you have these little clumps of grassy weeds or whatever, but they're pretty thick.
Yeah.
It's not like a grass. It's actually
a clump. It's
it's got. Well, it's not a clump of grass. It was that big weed that kind of comes out. But anyway, regardless, the wingtip has these pylons. Is that what you call them? They're little pylon or pontoons or whatever they are. And anyway, it caught the pontoon, and that's how low I was. And it obviously pitched it into the ground. It cartwheeled twice.
Yep.
And something went flying off the back of that thing.
Yep.
I was just like, uh-oh, we lost something. I thought it was the battery. I thought I ejected the battery. And got over there, and it turned out to be the motor ejected. I hit so hard that the whole motor case, just the outside, though, right? The outside with the prop and everything just came right out of the motor. It ejected it about, 6 or 7 feet away from the accident site. But the good news is it's EPP, so you had some...
No, the good news is that the motor casing was red, bright red.
Oh, that's true. It was bright red, so you could find it.
So you could see it.
But, so I walked out about 10 feet, turned around. I got lined up where the airplane hit, and you were at where the airplane hit. And I said, okay, we're going to walk together, and we'll probably see it.
Right.
You took about 5 steps.
I kind of just dropped some stuff, and then I looked down. It was right there. We saw it was right there.
So...
Luckily, the good part about foam, as opposed once again to compare this to my P-51
done.
It was balsa dust. Poof.
It was balsa dust.
This one, it was more of a couple of foam pieces. I think we had 2 small. The nose, the tip of the nose.
Yeah, just the very tip.
The very tip on the cowling that holds the battery down and everything.
Oh, the canopy.
The canopy, yes.
Yeah, the canopy.
The tip of the canopy
fell.
The tip of the canopy that has a magnet on it broke, so that was glueable. And
which is weird. It's like the magnet held, but the canopy came off.
Yes, it did. Right.
It's kind of weird.
That's a strong magnet.
Yeah.
And I think you tore one of the elevons was torn.
Right? Correct. Yeah, it ejected.
So that was about it. That was and the tip tanks.
Yeah, just the one tip tank
was ripped off. So that.
But I mean, surprisingly enough, because of the way it hit, it wasn't like terrible damage. I mean, I didn't just auger it in. It just
no.
I was rolling it upright from inverted, and I just caught the wingtip. It was going to be cool. Had I not hit the grass, it would have been really cool.
It would have been very cool. That's what all pilots say.
Exactly.
In the NTBS report.
Hey, y'all, watch this.
Hold the bear.
Yeah, exactly.
The good thing was we brought all my glues this time.
Yes, we did. Yep. So I had
for
some
once out of
I know, right?
The other times we were out flying.
2 weeks here, and we never had anything to repair it. And today we brought it out and actually remembered it. So Yep. So I grabbed some Gorilla Glue.
So once again, we used your trick with the Gorilla Glue, which was the water and Gorilla Glue.
That's right.
For getting the big pieces, for putting the Elevon back on, that was just some quick grip.
That's correct.
So 5 minutes holding that, and that was good to go. The only thing you got to watch out about the quick grip, sometimes if you use a lot of it, crazy, it will melt the foam on certain foams.
Right.
So for putting back on Elevons and stuff, if you're light with it, it'll go on no problem.
Right,
That's about it. But it's repaired. The only other thing that I have to do with it, I'll probably put a hollow carbon tube through the middle of the foam block that holds, because I have a stick in there that holds that thing down.
Sure.
So I'll probably put a carbon tube so I could put something else through the tube because the stick broke through the foam. So I'll come up with some other contraption to kind of,
or just put heavier magnets in there.
It won't, that won't hold.
Really?
Dude, you're zipping around at 105 miles an hour.
That's inverted.
Yeah, inverted. So I really have no faith in the magnets.
I know it.
Stock magnets.
Well, I don't blame you. So.
Yeah.
Well, my punishment for crashing it was to hold it together for 5 minutes.
You had to sit there for 20
I had to sit
minutes.
there for, it was only about 5 minutes, but I held it until the Gorilla Glue actually cured. And honestly, we threw the battery back in and I test flew it one more time.
Yeah.
And it flew great. I didn't even really have to add any trim or anything.
Yeah, I figured it would be kind of wonky.
Nope.
But it really wasn't.
Mm-mm. No, it was worked out. And then I gave you a chance. I tossed it for you, and you flew it around.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the batteries were dying. So I got once around the pattern. Yeah. But it flew fine and landed, and it was pretty great. So actually, in one of my other boxes, so if you notice, there was another Radjet on there. It was the Radjet 420. You saw on there.
Yeah. On your radio.
It's a miniaturized version of that one. It's like a UMX size.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
and
it flies on a little 3-cell.
Oh.
So imagine that size, UMX size of that plane that flies pretty fast. Well, it doesn't fly super fast, but it's a miniaturized version. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Actually, you know what we didn't do this week that we should have is put that little fiberglass 50 millimeter thing together.
Oh,
the last time I was here, I put almost the whole thing together.
Yeah.
And now that I was here and had some time to do it, because I was only here for a couple days.
And now you got more experience working with fiberglass.
I do, yeah. Thanks to Spencer.
Well,
I have some.
Now you mentioned it's sitting right there under the.
Look at that.
Right there.
Well, I got to leave tomorrow, so. Well, you got to fly your L-39 again. I know we've talked about it the last 3 episodes, but it was your birthday present, and today you kind of wrung it out. You did really good. You took it off, and you actually did some tumbles. And
did a couple of tumbles with your instruction. So I got a couple of tumbles in. Landings weren't that bad.
Nope.
I was pretty much nailing those. My turns are getting better.
Oh yeah, the turns are getting better. Your pattern work with this thing is getting much better, and I know you cranked up the speed a little bit this time too.
Yeah.
So I think you're getting more comfortable with it, and I think once I'm gone and not breathing down your neck about wrecking the thing, you'll get out there and put it through its paces.
I like it. It's. I have to say, folks, this particular plane has. I'm not going to say it doesn't have no bad tendencies, but it really has very few minimal tendencies for what we've been doing, and for what it can do. Like you said, doing a tumble. Doing these crazy
stuff. Well, if you own an Avanti and seen some of the sport jet stuff, this is the Avanti, electronics and gear and everything is just in an L-39 body.
Right.
And the L-39 is actually the large scale L-39. The real airplane is a trainer as well.
Plane. And like I said, that's the beauty of it because this thing, the stall characteristics are awesome.
Oh yeah, they just kind of mush around.
It doesn't snap roll on you. It doesn't do any crazy things on you. You can slow it way down. I mean, folks, you kind of, get a little scared. Like I took it up and I'm like slowing it down, and it's still flying.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. So that is really, really nice.
Actually, I think we were down at the Alamo Society. I did a real high alpha pass with you.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. Okay. So, I mean, it'll literally not quite stand on its tail, but it'll get pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's got to be fast on the rudder.
It doesn't have, like you said, any bad tendencies that should get you type of thing.
Yeah, not like some of the other jets. Some of the other jets, if you're not careful, it can bite you in a corner. Or something
and usually it's the landings, right? You come in, you make it a turn, you slow down too much, and you tip stall.
Sure. And this one doesn't do that.
Nope, not at all. So yeah, I'm really liking it. I'll probably end up painting it.
Oh yeah.
Because I scratched it up, on the runway down.
I know
with the Arc Skies.
Arc Skies. Yeah, you put a little scratch on the tip tank, but you really can't tell. And actually, this paint scheme actually looks pretty good out there, next to all the greenery that you have. So I mean, I don't know if I'd paint it like green, green camo because you may lose it in the trees.
No.
But yeah, I mean, it's up to you. You can do what you want with it now that you've kind of flown it and kind of gotten used to it. And it'll be interesting if you decide to do that. I'd love to, see some of the. Actually, you can post it on our Facebook podcast or Park Flyer Podcast listeners group Facebook page, so you can do that. So yeah. Well, that pretty much wrapped up our day. Actually, take that back.
No.
Jim got to fly again, didn't he?
Yes, he did. So his landings have improved.
Oh, really?
100%, dude.
What do you attribute to that?
Well, let's just take flying with a Zaggy. Zaggy's a great little model to fly.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, you bring in for a landing is fairly easy in the sense you just kind of set up a glide slope and just let it fly itself to the ground.
Right.
Honestly.
Right.
So Jim kind of had a tendency, and I guess it's from flying some of his other models. So he kept wanting to flare that plane. He'd get it down close to the ground and he'd want to flare it.
Yeah. That's a pilot's reaction, though.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have to flare a Zaggy. Just fly it into the ground,
And he is a full-scale pilot.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah,
I can see that.
So, like I said, he'd set it up. He'd get this beautiful glide slope, and he'd bring it in. And like I said, he would get within, like I said, 5 feet of the ground, and then it would just go awry.
Right.
And then, so he was either coming in too high, too fast, and then he'd skip the Zaggy off the ground. Actually, it was kind of cool.
Oh, he could do a touch and go, right?
He'd do a touch and go. He'd skip it off the ground, and then the Zaggy would pop back in the air. He'd curse a little bit. Sometimes he'd go around, and sometimes he'd just try to land it, and then it would cartwheel or something.
Right.
But I noticed, since he had some instruction with you and some time with you, this week he was nailing those landings. And I didn't see them all, but I could hear them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his Zaggy landing, actually, almost all of his landings look really good.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, his landings just improved. Just tremendously.
You think a lot of that has to do with the amount of expo he pulled off his airplanes?
Partially. I think that's part of it, but I just think, let's put it this way. We flew a lot in the past 2 weeks.
Yes, we have.
Mm-hmm. And Jim came out every single time. So, I mean, he was out there flying with us,
And we flew a lot of his stuff, too.
Oh, yeah,
he brought a lot of his stuff out.
So
he was flying quite a bit.
I just think once again, more stick time you have, the better you get. And so he was getting a lot of stick time. And I mean, it wasn't like we fly, 1 week and then he'd fly with us next week. I mean, we were flying twice or 3 times a week, and he was out there. So, that stuff just adds up, and your muscle memory starts coming back. And,
True.
And you just see it in his flying. So I just was, I was surprised and glad and happy, and he was happy. And like I said, when you can hear his landings or not hear his landings,
you didn't hear the smack.
Yeah, you just hear that shh, that nice shh when he lands, and I could just hear how good the landing was. So that was just excellent.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with some of the setup that we did. I retrimmed quite a few of his airplanes.
Well,
to fly.
That helped.
But yeah, he. I hadn't seen him fly before. I mean, this is the first time I met Jim this first 2 weeks. He was really super excited. He wanted me to fly a lot of his airplanes, which I appreciate.
Oh, yeah.
Today when we were departing, I told him how much I appreciate it. And I know he's a listener, so I'll tell him again on the air that, he was really kind to let me fly a lot of those airplanes.
Absolutely.
And it was fun, working with him and giving him some advice. And he thanked me today too. He said, "Hey, I appreciate all the advice you gave me, and I'll try to remember everything." It's like, good luck.
Well, I'm gonna have to give your email and phone number to him so you can.
Yeah, sure.
So if he needs to call you or something, or shoot you a quick note. I will say that for his giant Airmaster, his last landing in that was beautiful.
Well, that's because the second to last flight he did was not as
that one. I forgot about that one, yes.
Jim, we love you, man. That scared everybody. I'm sure he's listening, but it made everybody kind of jump. His heart rate went up a few beats on that one.
Just explain it just for our listeners, because he was doing really well, and you were talking him through a bunch of the landings and things he'd do to correct and different approaches. So what happened? Because I was kind of relaxing and was kind of semi-dozing, drinking my soda and eating a sandwich. So,
well, we were, he was just doing some aerobatic stuff, and I kind of walked him through a couple of maneuvers, and then he basically was trying to shoot the approach, and the wind was a steady state wind, and it was pretty stiff too. The windsock that we have on that field is for RCs, but it was standing straight out. It wasn't limp at all.
Right.
And so that's got to be at least a 10 mile an hour, wind. And unfortunately, it was coming right down the runway. So I told him, for me, I use a downwind leg. And then when I turn my base to final, I'll either go to idle power, half power, quarter power, or idle power, depending on, what my approach is going to look like.
Right.
And then if I need to lose altitude, I do it on the base leg. So I'll actually make a square base leg turn, or I'll make a real wide 180-degree descending turn. And so I was telling him that that's really what he should do. And this airplane is yellow, black, and silver. And it's a biplane. And when you get it into what I call the weeds, which is low enough below the tree line, the black wingtips kind of disappear. And all you can really – and the nose is actually black too. So all you can really see is the two yellow things in between the wingtips and the nose. And it kind of breaks up the profile. And I think my personal feeling is that he just kind of lost it in the trees. And it was a little lower than he likes, which is fine. I mean, we figured that out later. But at the time, I was just coaching him on how to get it set up because, he's got this gas airplane and he's got this wind coming down. And I'm like, you can't be too high and expect your airplane to land on the runway if you're, midfield and you're still 30 feet in the air. It's not going to work. So I was trying to get him to come down lower and then just carry the airplane into the runway to where it was kind of now sitting in a landing attitude, and then he could just kind of come off with the power. But I think he lost it in the trees from a visual standpoint. He didn't know which direction it was going. And he kind of mentioned that to me later. He's like, I can't do those low approaches like that. I have to do it because I can't see, into the trees. So the other thing is that, Jim and I talked about that a lot of guys flying, and I've, been around, but, some guys will come in at idle power, and then when they see they're not going to make the runway, they just jam the power. They just go full throttle. Well, that's going to make the airplane pitch up, right? Because you got all that power in there, and it's going to make you start climbing, and you don't want to push the nose over because that's counterintuitive, and so you pull the power back out. Well, now you've moved the airplane up to about a 30-degree nose attitude. As soon as you pull the power out, guess what happens?
Oh, stall?
Yep. Starts wing rocking. You try to correct it with the ailerons. Now you're dragging one of the wing versus the other, and the airplane snaps over on you. And it's usually stall spin right there at the very end. And he was telling me earlier that, he was having some pretty exciting landings because that was happening. So I was trying to get him to do a flatter, kind of a little bit flatter approach or a little bit steeper approach. And anyway, he came in, lost it, and I saw one of the wings start to drop, and he did exactly what most pilots would do. He just jammed the throttle, I think. The airplane pitched up, and I think just by virtue of kind of in that panic mode, he tried to correct one aileron, and as the wing tried to drop, his thumb pulled the elevator or the rudder as well. So now he's got full back stick and full aft elevator, and now he's got introduces rudder.
And I will say on this modified plane that rudder was very, very effective.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's massive. I mean, compared to what it normally is, it was a big rudder.
It's a big rudder.
So it was super uber effective. And honestly, to be between you and me and our listeners. Yeah, exactly. Don't tell anybody this.
Don't tell anybody.
No, but actually for Jim, I think that modification is probably what saved him. Because the airplane actually rotated around. I mean, it actually did a 180-degree turn with that rudder, which actually was very impressive.
Let me tell you, I saw that from, not having that information that you just said. I'm just sitting in the chair. I look over my shoulder. I see this plane coming in this beautiful approach. Take a sip of my soda. I look back over my shoulder, and all of a sudden, the next thing I do is I see the plane rocking, and then it just does this weird maneuver, and it does a 180 snap. It just snapped right,
and stood on its tail.
And you got to understand, folks, the throttle went from an idle to maxed out, and then this thing did this maneuver, and it scared me because I had my back to it, and I'm trying to scramble out of my chair because I had no idea where I was going to go. And that thing snapped around 180 degrees and just flew out, and it got instant altitude, and he climbed out. Then I look back at Jim and Mike, and I could just see Jim was he was a little excited.
I don't think he's passed that radio over to me so fast, man. He was like, "You take it."
Once it got up to altitude, he gave that radio over to you, and then he
that radio ejected in a heartbeat.
Yep, and he kind of went off to the side and just kind of. Had a moment, But to his credit, he came back for another landing right after that, shortly after that, because after you brought it back down, refueled or whatever, he took off. And he brought in a best landing I've seen him do to date.
Yeah, so he actually gave it to me, and I took it around the pattern, and then he kind of walked back over to me. And I said, here, let me explain what I was trying to tell you to do. And so I did. I came in. I kind of walked him through the whole thing. I said, this is what I want to see you do. I want to see you lose altitude here. I want to see you turn to final. I want to see you, you should be reducing the power into the flare because of this wind. Because if you just pull the power to idle, the airplane's just literally going to stop flying forward, and it's just going to start sinking. So you have to have a little power in the wind. Right. Even with real airplanes, when we fly real, smaller, I fly small Cessna sometimes too with some students. And if there's a big stiff wind, you have to, you can do it with idle power if you have enough altitude. But if you're dragging yourself in, you're never going to make it because your ground speed is very, very slow. So you're not covering the ground very much, and power is the only way you're going to be able to get enough airspeed to cover that ground. So with this particular wind, I told him, I was like, if you had no wind, that wouldn't have happened because you would have just floated on in. But because of the wind, you're sinking, and you see yourself sinking, and you make that correction. So this particular one, I came in, I landed it, I rolled right up to us, but I didn't shut the airplane off. And he said, okay. And he kind of shook his hands. He goes, let me try this again. And I said, okay, we'll do it. He said, but I want to make a little steeper approach. I was like, not a problem. We can do that. So we basically took off, went around, downwind again. He kept his altitude, but then when we got on the base leg, he pulled the power off, and then as he came down, he was at a more steep approach where he could see the airplane a little bit better. It wasn't lost in the trees. And then we, on the way down the glide slope, I told him, I said, well, okay, remember, don't jam the throttle in. You have to come lower because you're steeper, right? So if you level off 10 feet in the air, you're going to have no airspeed, and the airplane's going to just kind of fall. So I told him, I was like, just keep it coming down, and then just come in with a little power. So he did about 2 clicks of power, and then as he rounded out, the power kept him moving forward, and it just sat right down. I mean, it was
whisper quiet, and like you said, it was smooth as butter.
Yeah, and he was so excited.
It was beautiful. It was the best landing I've ever seen him do.
Yeah,
it was fantastic.
Well, he did a good job, and it was all him. I wasn't on a buddy box or on the sticks or none of that stuff. He did it all on his own. And I got to give it up to Jim. He's he listens, and not that I'm the world's best. I'm sure there's tons of people out there better than me as a flyer, but he did listen to everything I said, and more power to him. I hope he continues to do that and sees this progression and continued success. And more power to you, Jim. I know you listen to us, and man, it was fun flying with you. I appreciate you letting me fly all your airplanes, and hit us up and let us tell Jay, and Jay will give you an update on what's going on.
I might get an earful when he comes back. When I go fly
him again.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that guy! He was on my ear all the time. No, hopefully I gave him some good pointers, and he'll be able to build on that. So.
Yep. Well, we did some other flying with him too. We went from the big planes to the little planes.
We sure did. He finished. You did I think on one of our other episodes, we talked about losing the tiny whoop.
Yes, the teeny tiny. Yeah. I don't know how he found it.
I don't either. And he did mention that he had listened to that particular podcast and thought it was funny. He's like, that was funny that I was giving you a hard time. But, yep, at the very end of the day, we had burned through most of our batteries, and Jim had greased his buttered landing in. And Jay said, well, hey, man, I got a couple batteries for this tiny whoop. I put a headless mode on it, which means that the quad doesn't care which direction it's facing. It will always go forward or always come backwards. And we let him sit down in the chair and try it. And excellent job. Good job.
Yeah. The big thing with him was just the understanding what the throttle did. Yeah, and I didn't know that. I don't know. I just assumed, or I thought Jim had told me before that he had a quad.
Yeah.
And that, or he had a helicopter.
Right.
So I just assumed he had at least the basics down for how to fly one of these things, and I guess that's what caused us to have problems before of almost losing the whoop is when you were flying it, but I'm just saying when Jim was flying it earlier. Now I understand why he was having some difficulty flying the aircraft, and when I was shouting at him, what to do because I was running around chasing the little whoop. Once again, right out, a comedy scene.
Yeah, sure, that was pretty.
I'm running around the field chasing this little.
That'd have been a good YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly. So I would yell to Jim or to these guys who were sitting back, back at camp as I'm running cross country after this whoop, what to do or what it was doing. And I didn't realize that he didn't understand or get the concept of going forward and what forward meant to him in airplane terms as opposed to a whoop or a helicopter. And
actually, you and I had a really good discussion about that coming home. It's just a lot of that is semantics.
It is.
You just got to look at your audience.
It was just one of those things that didn't dawn upon me until after everything was said and done. Since you were sitting there back there talking to him and you explained to him what the difference is or what I was trying to say to him.
Well, I was able to see when you yelled something. I was able to see what his input was, and it wasn't what you were trying to get across.
Right.
So you would say something, and he would do something, and
I'd say forward.
Yeah, and he would go higher because he was forward on the throttle, not the elevator.
Right. and it's just I can see
how
so
it was
just
happen, it was an easy misunderstanding, but it was a lot easier when you had a third party sitting there because if it was just the two of you. Holy crap, you're like, dude, come back and sit down. What the heck, how you're doing this and this and this. And he's like, well, I'm doing what you told me to. No, you're not. Yes, you are. So it was good to have a third set of eyes there to actually see it. Because once I saw it, I go, oh, you got to understand. When he says forward, he means this stick, not the throttle. And I think by just putting all of that together and then having a conversation with you and then Jim did incredible today. He flew that tiny whoop.
Right. So I guess everything kind of came together today.
Yeah, it did.
Right. Yeah. So
for all of us,
for all the practice, or a couple times we've been practicing with these little tiny whoop. So today it really came together. Like I said, I put that headless mode on there.
Yeah, I think that helped out a lot.
that he didn't, since he was flying it visually, he wasn't under the hood or flying FPV. He was just trying to get down the basics of flying the quad. That headless mode was perfect because he could understand the relationship of what the throttle does, for controlling it as moving forward or backwards, up, down. The throttle is important because even though you push forward on the sticks and you may go forward a little bit, you still need the throttle to provide the thrust to move you forward.
Right.
So, like I said, all of a sudden you could see that the tumbler started clicking in his brain and he got it. So we had an ant mound and an airplane that were sitting out there, and I just said, hey, keep it between the plane and the ant mound right there in front of us. And by the time we got through our fourth battery, he started getting that throttle control down, and the next thing you know, he was holding it steady in the wind, in that gusting wind.
That's true.
And it started really clicking. So it won't be too long before he's going to be getting this, and we can start racing in the house.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. You'll have to do a whole series on that too. I think you got to start racing, and I think it was one of our projects. We were supposed to build a bunch of little.
Come on, we had so many projects.
I know, and unfortunately, here we sit, and our hour is up, and holy smokes!
Well, I just dropped the parts to that project.
Yeah, that's right.
For the little gates, my little regulators to
turn the lights on. Yeah.
Yep. Hour's up already.
I know, it's crazy.
Dude, it's been fantastic having you down here in Texas.
It's been great.
As always, time goes too quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were talking about it. Too bad you didn't live down the street. On the other hand, it's a good thing you don't live down the street because we would not get anything done. Our wives would be bitching at us.
Yeah,
I could already hear it. Is Michael over at your place? Is Jay over there? No, where are those guys?
I know, right?
They're
out at the field.
So, oh my gosh.
I know. Actually, Jim said that today. He goes, I got to call my wife because she gets a little nervous when I don't get home.
Oh, yeah, we kept him out all day today.
We did, yeah.
We absolutely
Which is kind of why I look like a lobster.
You look beautiful.
Thank you.
You have a nice glow about you. And plus, it got a little cool this evening, and the heat radiating off of you is just it warms me.
It warms the whole room.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
You're like a little hot spot in my house.
And it's crazy because, I can run around Arizona, and I don't get burned, But I think it was just because the sun was out today.
It's kind of funny. You remind me of, somebody from New England who would just come down here or something.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how it got so much sun.
You live in the Sunshine State. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but
how many
I don't
days,
know.
how many
guess
days of contiguous sunlight do you get in your state?
Yeah, like almost 350 days. I don't know. This year maybe a little less because we got 10 inches of snow earlier this year.
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
So, but yeah, that's insane. So,
but buddy, I'm sorry to see you go.
Yeah, it's been a really quick trip, and man, I can't believe it's over, and I got to go all the way back. Before you know it, maybe I'll come back down.
Okay, you're always welcome. And my mom loves seeing you.
I know it, and it's good news too. Your mom, actually, update on her. She got cleared from the doctor, so
she can drive now.
She can drive. She's in good health.
Although she doesn't have a truck, Mike and I destroyed.
I know we destroyed the truck. Something with the transmission, so she's gonna have to get that looked at, but. But yeah, she's doing well and up and around and cooked us some great meals. I think I gained 50 pounds while I was here. It was good food, good people, good times. I appreciate Jim being a good sport and let us talk about him on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Poor guy. We're actually how weird is it to be listening to yourself, to the podcast and we're talking about you. It's one thing to talk about each other to our face, but we're talking about some other guy. It's kind of strange. But and Bill and his group down there, Bill Surratt and his group at Alamo Radio Control Society did a great job hosting us. I appreciated all that time. We did that podcast 2 weeks ago on them, and I know we were supposed to have some other stuff while we were together. And I guess we mentioned that in the last 2 weeks ago when the podcast came out. But Philip actually was down in Miami. And I think we're going to have him on as a guest, so that will cover that. Because we were supposed to have him on this week, and you and I didn't get a chance to get to him because I think he was traveling back to his place. But we'll touch base with him and talk about his little event. He went to a World War I. Yeah, so they had all of the World War I airplanes, and he got to do four interviews down there with some guys. So
nice.
We'll get his take on his little event down there in Miami and talk to him here probably in the coming weeks. And, back, man, summer's almost here. Holy smokes.
It is. It is here. Spring is here.
Yeah.
Summer's
right around
here.
The corner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, hey, make sure that, our listeners can always go to our Facebook page and they can see some of our antics and some pictures of us out at the field or down at the Arcs field.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it was kind of funny. One of the things that happened on our listeners page is I think one of our listeners posted a picture of his hobby room.
Oh, yes.
So we had a couple of guys that were posting pictures. So we love that kind of thing. If you've got photos of your airplanes or your flying fields or whatever it is that you have a photo of, go ahead and go to the Park Flyer Podcast listeners group on the Facebook and post your picture. Let us comment on it. Let's see what you're doing. Summertime's coming around, so I know Philip and his little group up there, the snow's melting, and they're starting to get out, more. And so this summer, let's see what you built, right? Let's see that, and let's see what your flying field looks like and what your hobby room looks like. We can actually send you a photo. I got to get back home so I can have my hobby room built.
More on that later.
Yeah, no, it's a project I'm in the middle of. So, well, man, it has been a fantastic time. I'm really sad to pack up and leave tomorrow, but I got a flight that goes out in the morning, and I'll be back home. So hard to believe.
It is, bud. Well, once again, I'm gonna miss you.
Mm-hmm.
Wish you could stay, but I'm sure the wife would want you back. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. She's already texted me, when are you coming home? So, but I have to actually, believe it or not, before we go, I have to thank them too, because I know they're both listeners as well, and they put up with a lot. Your wife put up with a lot, just us kind of trupsing all over her place and taking over her room and
we
staying up late.
We definitely have encroached upon her territory.
I know, and she's been a good sport about it. So.
Well, because she likes you, so we got a history.
We do have a history.
So,
yeah, we go back quite a ways now. I mean, every year it gets like, wow.
Well, no, dude, you come over here and then you fix my doorknobs.
That's true too.
Dig a ditch, you do whatever.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, "Oh, Mike, he just comes here for a day or two, and he digs a ditch, but you don't dig a ditch that needs to be dug."
Well, it's always nice that you let me stick around and stay. So I figure at least putting one or two items together doesn't hurt. So. Well, we are on our way out, and I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next podcast. It's been great, and from Michael here in Arizona.
And Jay from the hills of Texas.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Let's fly.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, and feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.